this. All right. All right. Hey, good to see everybody tonight. We're so honored that you're joining us here for this conversation with several folks in our church. And I want to thank all you guys for joining me tonight. So good to see all of you. And I was telling a lot of the guys who are on the Zoom with us tonight that I've seen a lot of them throughout the last several weeks, but some of them I haven't seen at all. So except for once or twice. So good to see all of you. I want to thank, we look like the Brady Bunch here. I want to thank all of you for agreeing to come on tonight and just have this conversation. And then for our church family to see some familiar faces, I think is really awesome as well. I want to make a couple of quick announcements just for our church people. Then we're going to dig into some conversation tonight about this past Sunday's message and really whatever comes up. This is just kind of off the cuff. Today, or actually earlier this week, this is just for anybody who's interested. I recorded a series of songs. I sing once a month at a couple of assisted living places here in town. So I recorded a series of songs. They're hymns, just a concert for Mallard Ridge and for Kerner Ridge. We're gonna play that live Friday at 2:00 for anybody who's interested. If you're at home and you like hymns, that's something you can log on to. That'll live stream from the church YouTube. It'll also be on our church page, Facebook. It'll live stream. Actually, it's pre-recorded, but it'll come up as a service or whatever on Friday. So if you're interested in that, you guys can log on Friday. Also, if you're watching and you know somebody who doesn't have access to internet, we are going to also post this to where folks can call in on the telephone, so you can call them and remind them they can call and listen if they want to hear some good hymns. That'll be this Friday. We've got some folks to pray for. I want us to pray for the Motzinger family. Many of you know Meredith, Seth McDonald's girlfriend. Her grandmother passed away this week, and so we want to pray for that family. We also want to be praying for the family of Jerry Goodwin. She passed away Sunday night, and sweet lady, and we'll miss her dearly. The obituary is posted on the church Facebook page if you want any information. Of course, with all that's going on, they'll probably be doing a memorial service at a later time for her. A couple of announcements. Deb's on here with me. We have some great missions opportunities right around the corner for you as a church family. So stay tuned for that. Hopefully by the weekend, we'll make some announcements in regards to some of those opportunities that we discussed actually last night in the missions meeting. And happy birthday to Grady. Woo! Grady, my son, turned 19 today, so I thought I'd give him a big old public shout out. And then don't forget to join us live Sunday, 10 a.m., oaklawnlife.com. You can go to the church Facebook page. Remember, we're only streaming now on Sundays through the YouTube live stream and through the church page. So make a note of that. We want you to join us. We've got some great things planned for this coming Sunday. Spread the word about that. Of course, we are on the stay-at-home plan right now until May the 8th, and so we'll have more information for you as that date approaches on a game plan for what we're thinking the best possible route for us moving forward. We're still, of course, it's just changing constantly, but we're working towards that. And one more thing, before we get into this, I want to thank everyone for giving. We had great months in March and April. Remember that you can give online at oaklawnlife.com, or you can mail in your tithes and offerings, or you can bring them to the church. We certainly are grateful for all of you who have remained so faithful, and proud of our church for just remaining steadfast through all that's going on. And so that was a mouthful. I just wanted to give everybody some updates and some information along the way. So, hey, thanks so I'm going to just call out your names, and when I call out your name, just wave at everybody in case we have folks that are going to watch this that don't know who you are. I got Matt Osborne. Now, you're up in my top left corner, but I don't know where you are in regards to everybody else. Josh and Amanda Wicker. Jennifer West. Deb Weaver. Of course, Caleb Simmers. Ted and Susan Detter. And Jim Warren. Jim, I'm so glad to see you.
Good to see you as well.
Yeah, so is this your first time doing a Zoom?
Yes, and my heart is racing because I'm not a techie, and I'm afraid this is going down at some point, and I will have no idea how to fix it.
Just don't touch it.
So I've got my fingers crossed.
No, it's okay. Yeah, it's okay. I think everybody else has had some experience with this at some point or another. It's actually been pretty awesome to have this kind of technology available to us. So, yeah. So I don't know if all of you who are helping me tonight were able to listen to the message Sunday. I did send you guys some notes. I felt like way back, right after the first week, where this Sunday is our 8th straight Sunday. I believe it's 8.
Mm-hmm. That's
8th
correct.
straight Sunday now. It will be without us being able to gather together. And I think after the first Sunday, I just felt impressed to go to the book of James. Y'all hear my dog. I think the first sermon series I preached after I became the pastor at Oaklawn, I preached it through the book of James. And I just remember specifically, especially chapter 1, dealing with how a believer, how a Christian should navigate through trials and through difficulty. And so I just kind of went to chapter 1 and dove in, and we were kind of working verse by verse. This past Sunday, we were in verses 9 through 12. And so you guys, 10 or so folks now, don't make me talk the whole time. So I'll try not to put anybody on the spot. But just chime in, and I'll just say at certain points, like me and Josh did last week, just kind of open it up for discussion. I love Andy Stanley. Several years ago, he preached I can't remember if it was his brand new series or one of those, but he made the statement, God's silence does not equate to his absence. And I felt like that Sunday was a time just to remind folks of that sometimes we pray, sometimes we search, sometimes we seek, but it seems like God kind of has disappeared on us. So I tried Sunday to reassure everybody that that's not the case, that, of course, he's not on a sabbatical. He's not on a break. He's still faithful right there working. I was wondering if any of you, maybe not going through the last several weeks, but have experienced something in your life, or maybe you can testify to the fact that at some point you felt like, because I know I have, at some point you felt like, hey, my prayers, I feel like they're hitting the ceiling. And you've even questioned, where is God in this mess? What's going on? Any one of you want to talk to that or speak to that, and then I'll open it up here. Raise your hands. No. Deb? Okay, go.
I've definitely had times like that in my life, and it's not, I don't think though, I think I immediately go to my default, which is I've moved myself because God hasn't. That's something that was impressed upon me early when I got saved, and it's helped me a whole lot. He's there. I may have moved, or I may have turned to the right or the left, but he hasn't, and it's kind of a jarring reminder that way.
Yeah, I did. I read I don't know if it was a bumper sticker or somebody, a quote. When you feel far away from God, something like he's not the one that moved, you moved, or
Right.
something like that. But
yeah,
oftentimes that may be the case. Anybody else got a thought on that?
Yeah, I think.
Oh, go ahead, Jim.
No, you go ahead.
We're gonna
Jennifer, you go first, and then we'll let Jim go.
Okay. I know for me over the last year, I was seeking some things that I really thought God was pushing me towards, and kind of pursued those things and didn't really get the answers that I was expecting. And so that's been one of those things where I've really had to really lean into that whole idea of God's silence doesn't equate to his absence, is just that it's just for not right now, or maybe I misunderstood the plan or something along those lines. So I know that's where I've been.
Yeah, that's good. Y'all know my ADD's kicking in. I got my kids trying to knock on the door. You all right? Okay. See you. You want to say happy birthday to Grady? He's peeping in.
Happy birthday,
birthday.
Grady.
Happy birthday, Grady.
And
Hello, Judah.
see you later. All right. Sorry, guys.
Hey, it's real life.
Yeah. Yeah. I heard a song one time, Jennifer, and I can't remember who sang it. The song was something like a greater yes or something like that. Sometimes God's, of course, we feel like, and I've been there, that I kind of know what his plan's going to be, but he has something totally different. And it's not like he's saying no, but he has a greater, something better.
Right.
Yeah.
And I do think about it in perspective, even with the events of now. And I just think if those things had happened, I probably would not be living here, and I would probably be living on my own. And just thinking about the fact that I would be all by myself. So sometimes I think about it also from that perspective and think, wow, maybe that was not the timing was maybe not right at that moment.
Yeah. And I'm grateful God works all that out for us. Sometimes it can be disappointing, but waiting on his timing is so important. Actually, his timing seems never to match mine, but in the end, he absolutely knows what's best for us. So, anybody else got a thought on that? Josh?
Jim is next.
Oh, Jim, then Josh. Jim, go ahead.
These thoughts are kind of raw thoughts right now. I'm still processing them. This has been a very unique time, not only in my life, but everybody's life. Social distancing are words that are new to our vocabulary, sheltering in place and so forth. Sheltering in place and being away from everyone. I have missed the fellowship with people. And in the beginning of the sheltering, I felt isolated. I had my wife to talk to. I talked to the children's telephone, but I just felt closed in to the point that it was affecting how I felt about a lot of things. And I began to notice that in my prayer life, as I was praying to God and asking him to have his hand on this situation, I felt that I was at a place where the prayer was not getting to the top of the ceiling.
Right.
And I felt like that I was very alone, that he was not hearing. And that troubled me. It troubled me a lot. Going online, being able to attend church online and technology was great. It also forced me to have to work with a computer a little bit more and become a little bit more comfortable. But I think in the end, the thing that helped me to realize that I wasn't alone was being able to now have time. Before I was always running around doing things, but I have time to sit and get into the word of the Lord, to read, to meditate, to pray. And I think after reading his words, after contemplating, I still don't understand what's going on, but I do feel closer to him. Sometimes I still feel that my prayers are not getting outside the room, but that's less frequent now than it was before. If that makes any sense.
Yeah,
I still feel isolated. I still feel that I miss being with church family. Bill Greenwood and I talked today. I still feel the absence of that connection of church family.
Yeah.
And I just, I guess it's something that I'm working through. I feel closer to the Lord, but I'm not sure that everything that I'm saying is maybe getting out.
Yeah. I feel you, Jim. I miss everybody too badly. Hey, right quick, I just popped it Facebook Live on my phone, and I don't know if they can even hear you guys talk. So we'll try to give them something. So for those of you who are watching with me right now, I've got 8 of our church members, 9 of our church members on with me tonight through a Zoom. We'll post this later. We had some technical difficulty and couldn't get it posted live, but we'll post it later. And we're having a conversation about James 1:9-12. And so, oh, good. Joanna's watching. She said actually she could hear you, Jim. So that's good. So we'll just you guys can follow me along if you want for the next 30 minutes, and we'll be posting this later. All right. Josh, you were next in line to make a comment there.
Well, it just reminded me of
Josh, you were next.
what we had just finished in our Sunday school lesson. One of the last ones that we had, because it was the intertestamental period, and how they went 400 years and hadn't heard God speak. And I talked to my class about, how impatient we get, if we go an hour or a day or a month or whatever. And these people went generations without hearing prophet, without hearing, anything from God. Talking about the heavens being brass. I imagine those folks felt that more than we know. And it also reminded me of in Exodus chapter 3. It's one of my favorite. I say one of my favorite passages, like one of my favorite hymns, right? They're all my favorite. But it's when God and Moses are having their talk at the burning bush, and and the people had been begging God for deliverance, and it seemed as though He hadn't been hearing them, and then the Lord said, "I have observed the misery of my people in Egypt, and I have heard them crying out because of their oppression, and I know about their suffering." And then He says, "And I have come down to rescue them." And that is salvation in a nutshell. That is Old Testament Christ coming down for our rescue. And all those years, and all that time that we do think God is silent, we think He's 1,000 miles away. I've been there myself, and my prayers are getting up further than the ceiling. And unfortunately, all we really have is each other. And we can say, you know what, I've been there too. And so I think the fact that we have gone through things like that, and if we don't reach out to folks, that's one of the things I don't ever want my pain to go to be in vain. I want to at least use it to help somebody else along.
Yeah, that's good. Matt?
Yeah, Josh, just to add to that, I was thinking while you're talking about the verse verses you just read there, I was thinking about in Psalms, how many times did David say in one of the Psalms, "Lord, why are you so far from me?" I mean, he says it over and over again in several different Psalms. So we definitely have that kindred spirit with him. But then I think of the Lord in the Garden of Gethsemane when He said, if it would, let this cup pass from me. I mean, he was praying to the Father, but Father already had a plan, and He had to go forward with it.
Oh man, that's a great word right there. And yeah, I was thinking kind of the same thing, especially about the psalmist who just gut-wrenching honesty time and time again, especially from David about God, and he feeling like that his silence was equating to his absence. Where are you? I don't see you, feel you, hear you. I don't anything you. And but time and time again, God proved Himself faithful. And then, man, what a great illustration about Jesus in the garden too. Good truth. Yep. Anybody else? Caleb?
You're muted, Caleb.
Hang on, yeah, there it is. Got you now.
Actually wishes she had that in real life. No, I think you went through a whole series on denying yourself right before all this went down.
Yeah.
I don't think we all thought there was going to be practical for the entire congregation to do it together. But it happened. The church calendar has Lent on it, and we all think we did something because we don't eat chocolate for 40 days. And we've waited, like this angst of waiting, and I'm not trying to belittle that. I try to do something every year, but I think this season of waiting is different because there was no timetable on it. There still really isn't a timetable on it. There's no, well, if we can just get to this date, everything will be fine and back to normal. And a lot of what is going on right now kind of goes at what we value as Americans, like being able to work and make money and all the things that are like big values to us. Like busyness is like a virtue in our culture. If somebody says they're busy, we like respect that. We don't know how to slow down. We don't know how to rest. We don't know how to pause. We don't know how to wait. Like all those things are not strengths for most of my neighbors and myself and my family. And I think we've all just kind of been put into an extended season of Lent that we're having to learn how to lose things, how to mourn not being able to have life the way we thought it was going to be. What does it look like to do that and still trust and rest in his plan and his wisdom and his faithfulness? How do we still have the joy of the Lord when we don't have the things that we think we need to make us happy? I think all those things are lessons that I've been learning over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's good, Caleb. I've felt a lot of the same. We have actually had a lot of conversations, me, you, and Jake, about the same things. It's definitely been a disruption to the norm, and I think for me, you hit it. One of the things for me is like the uncertainty on when it's going to end. You just don't know. And Jim, you alluded to that a little bit. Just that causes me a little bit of anxiety because I'm looking out and want to say, okay, here's where we can do this. Here's when we're going to be able to do this. Maybe we can do that, and we still don't have those certainties at all. So
I think
But
the
you know-
danger is us wanting to just flip the switch back and not learn the lessons that we were supposed to learn through
Oh,
this.
yeah.
Like if we could just there's a lot of us, if we could just flip the switch back and have life exactly the way it was 5 months ago, we would do it. But there's something for us to learn about ourselves, about our community, about our values, about what our faith and our trust is in. Like there's things that we need to be learning through this that if all we do is just like cross our fingers and hold on till we can just go back to life as normal, we'll have wasted a season that we all should have grown in.
You know, one of the things that impresses me about this whole situation is that God's ways are so much greater than our own that we don't necessarily understand the way of the Lord. But look at some of the positives from this situation that we're facing. Scientists have stepped up and said the seas are clearing up, the air is clearing up, the land is healing itself. Some of the animals are not having or they have room on beaches to lay eggs, and they're expecting greater some of endangered species having more numbers. So out of all of this mess, we don't understand it, but in the midst of it, God is bringing a lot of good in healing the land that we've taken for granted. And I think that's a positive. I think that's seeing him in action in our life, and we can celebrate that.
that's a great
Just
point.
my thought anyway.
Yeah, that's great thought. So we've got 10 or so watching on Facebook. I know that they're trying to hear because I've got my camera just pointing at the computer. So Mike Pope said, "Speak up." So you're doing okay.
You
But
wouldn't be able to hear anyway.
Yeah, Mike, you should have joined us. What's going on, man? Hey, so if you're watching on Facebook, we'll repost this later, and it'll look like you'll be able to hear just fine. And I apologize again for the difficulty we had. So Sunday, I made a statement that I really felt like I wanted to skip verses 9 through 11 in this chapter, as they're difficult, really difficult verses. James just James does not skip anything. He just addresses everything that needs to be addressed, right to the core. And these are tough verses to expound on. Verse 9, of course, says, "Let the lowly brother glory in exaltation, but the rich in his humiliation, because as a flower of the field, he will pass away." So James, because this early church was facing severe persecution, and James understood that there were, of course, those who were fortunate, those who weren't so fortunate within the church. He addresses both situations in regards to their response to trials. And I made the statement that trials affect everyone, like that no one gets a pass. And I tried to play off the word immunity a little bit, that no one is immune to trials. I don't know. Let's talk about that a little bit, and how the church should respond to the call to be responsible, not only to the Lord as far as how we respond to the Lord. I guess our response to the Lord when trials come our way, when difficulty comes our way, no matter where we are in life, no matter what life has kind of thrown at us. And then how are we to be the church? I use the word together a lot Sunday. That's very important to me. And I think that the New Testament speaks great measures to it, that we are to be there for one another through these difficult situations. Anybody have any comments on that? As far as James, of course, he talks first. He calls him the lowly brother. And what he's talking about is, as far as I can tell in the text, basically those who are less fortunate, because in the next phrase he says, "And then let the rich," those who, you're basically talking with wealth, those who've been blessed with wealth, those who may have fallen on hard times at certain points. What do you guys think about some of the things we said Sunday and how we're to respond to some of that? Anybody?
Well, the rain's going to fall on the evil and the righteous. I mean, nobody gets a pass on that, like you said. And I something that's really impressed me while this has been going on, you really get to see a side of yourself that you maybe wouldn't see when things are, oh my Lord, Caleb, that scares me to death. Quit, the Facebook people won't know what we're laughing at.
Caleb to, that's all. No, you should leave it. They probably, do y'all know who that is? Who can guess who that is?
That's
It's
the lowly
you.
brother.
That's me when I was that's my senior picture. That is awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, Deb, keep
Sorry,
going.
Deb. I was working on that before you started talking, and then it just happened to pop
Hey,
up.
I gotta zoom in on it. Everybody, Caleb's background. There we go.
Don't pick his nose.
That's great.
Okay.
Oh my
All right,
God.
sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Let me follow that. I think it's an opportunity for us to examine ourselves, because this is an opportunity to really see, what do we rely on? What, how much do we rely on, whether it's a job or dwindling savings or a lot of time at home with people that we're not always at home with. That's a real lesson there. And I think if we can learn the lesson that God wants us to see about ourselves, it can make us more aware of what we need to be looking for outside of our own little walls, and thinking more about the widows and the orphans, and ways that we can minister with the technology we have, with the phones we have. I think there's a lot for us to learn. I think that's what Caleb was kind of saying earlier. And the more we can work on that, I think the more we will become sensitive to what other people are going through.
That's good. How do you guys feel about, James just comes right out and how he talks about, like, he says the lowly brother should glory in his exaltation. I did a lot of study on that. I felt like he's just talking about, even if we are, even if we go through this life and life is hard all the time, it's just difficult. There will come a time of glory for those who obviously remain faithful to Jesus. And my thought kept going to the fact that it's again, it's not so much about this life. Faithfulness in this life is important in regards to what's going to happen beyond this life. And I'm going to talk about that actually more this coming Sunday. But, I think all of us at some point we've fallen on hard times. We felt like, again, that maybe you were scraping the bottom of the barrel or going through a difficult time. This chapter knocks me down over and over when James is like, hey, count it all joy. Just count it all joy when you face difficulty. How do you guys take that? Like, is that hard for you? It's hard for me to think it through and to wrap my mind around how we're supposed to do that. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I think part of it is that's where our faith comes into play, that we can't see it, and that unknown, the uncertainty plays with our minds. And so, but when we have troubles, we know, and people go, where's God? Good grief, what would it be like if God wasn't here?
Mm-hmm.
And I can't, an article was sent to me at work, and it talked about, especially during this COVID-19, we're all going through the same storm, but we're in different boats. Both Josh and I have been blessed to keep our jobs through this. I have friends who haven't been able to keep their jobs, and coworkers who are having to take a pay cut because of it. But we're all going through the same storm. We're just in different boats, and no one's more special than the other. We're all equal. My pain's no more than somebody else's, and it's not less than somebody else's. I think that's just where our faith comes into play, to say God is there, and it could be that much worse if he wasn't.
I think Amanda's right. I think that what James is trying to tell us in referring to the lowly brothers and the rich is that in the eyes of God, as far as eternity is concerned, we are all equal. God does not look at us for how much we have or how little we have. He looks at us as a child of God. We're the ones that impose classes and categories on people. And I think that sometimes affects how we treat or how we respond to other people. But what James is telling us is that we need to get back to the basic idea of what Jesus came to teach, and that is that we are all children of God. There are no differences. There is no one more important or less important. That as God's children, we are to respond to one another in a humble manner, in a loving manner, to pick each other up and to encourage each other along the way.
Yeah, great thought, Matt.
Yeah. So in verse 9 and the first part of verse 10, what I see there is a leveling of the playing field. The lowly man being brought up, the rich man being humbled. And that's what trials do. I mean, even in a church setting, we have those among us that are better off and those that aren't. And now as we go through trials, that's the time for us that have more to be humbled and assist others. And those others are going to receive the blessing from it and be exalted.
Yeah, and I think you're exactly on it. I think I mentioned that Sunday, that it is the leveling of the playing field, so to speak. Yeah, excellent thought there. Anybody else on that, Caleb?
I think it goes almost hand in hand with what Paul talks about all through Philippians. He basically teaches us contentment and joy from a prison cell. That's where he's writing the book. And I think a lot of times trials and difficulty actually make it easier for us to understand where we actually find true joy, because it strips away everything else. And if I lose conveniences, if I lose whatever, I'm not trying to downplay people who have been sick or who have lost loved ones or lost jobs, but if I lose the things that I was relying on and dependent on, and I still can find joy, that means I have found it in where true joy comes from. And I think sometimes there's no way to experience that unless some things are removed or some things are taken away. So I think James and Paul are both getting at that, is that sometimes all the time we have to have things that we were leaning on. They have to be crucified or taken away in order for us to experience resurrection, life, and joy that can only be found in him.
Yes. And so, Josh, did you have something? Just saw you lean up like you was.
Yeah. To me, the whole thing that I've been thinking about the worst case is the best case scenario for me in all this stuff. Just my own personal, worst case is it gets me and it kills me, and the best case is it gets me and it kills me. The best case is we have become so temporal minded and so here and now and so concerned with earthly things. And I know it's easy to say, but this world isn't our home. It hasn't been our home. And to focus on things that are going to matter 1,000 years from now, because we will be somewhere 1,000 years from now. And so that is what it's kind of brought out to me, is that heaven isn't a penalty. Dying isn't a penalty. And that's off topic.
Yeah, that's good though. But I think that was Paul's mentality as well. Of course, he said it. For to me to live is Christ, to die is gain. When you think about Paul, that dude was consumed with Jesus. Man, I get convicted every time I start reading or talking about Paul. That guy. Well, and let's just skip to the end of the message Sunday, the Philippians 4 passage, because Caleb, you really got us there with your comments. James talks about the rich in the church, and he, of course, talks about them, that they glory in their humiliation. But then all this conversation immediately took me to Philippians 4, and I think that we may have talked about this last week, Caleb and Jake, at some point before I even, maybe after I wrote the message, and I thought, yep, I already went there with that. Philippians 4:11. I'm going to read these 4 verses, and then let's all just be convicted and hit the altars in our homes here. But Paul says, not that I speak from want, for I've learned to be content in whatever circumstance I am. Verse 12, he says, I know how to get along with humble means, and I also know how to live in prosperity. In any and every circumstance, I've learned the secret of being filled and going hungry, both of having abundance and suffering need. And then here's the verse that I think we do take out of context. And if any of you want to speak to that in a minute, do that. Because I thought, I said a little bit about it Sunday. He says, I can do all things through him who strengthens me. Nevertheless, he says, you have done well to share with me in my affliction. So think about, some of you, if you want to speak to this, Paul, it looks to me, and if you study his life, he had been on both sides of this, right? I just saw the picture behind you, Caleb. I'm going to have to laugh a second and then get back to serious.
Hey, Pope.
Okay, who can guess who that is behind Caleb now? Right here.
Mike Pope.
That is Mike Pope.
It is.
How you doing, Mike?
Come on back, Caleb.
What?
Caleb, come on.
I found a directory this week, and that's the gem I pulled from it.
That is amazing. Mike,
Wow.
Yes,
good
sir.
to hear you.
Yeah,
That'd be good.
back when I colored my hair brown.
Listen, mustaches are coming back in. I think you should grow it back.
It'll be a totally different color.
Yeah.
Wow.
What do you guys
Too
think
much
about these verses?
laughing going on.
So what do you guys think about these verses? Paul, of course, he's like, I've been on both sides of this, and wherever I land, he just says, I'm going to be content. And man, I think in myself, man, I want that. But wow, again, Paul is like so uber committed to Jesus. And then talk about verse 13. I can do all things through him who strengthens me, because I see that verse. That's my Hobby Lobby verse. You know,
Yeah.
it's in all the Christian bookstores, and it's you see guys score a touchdown and they point up, and it's on. Nothing against Tim Tebow, he's awesome, but it's the Philippians 4:13. But really, what's this verse getting at here in this context? Anybody?
Yeah, Jay, I think you're right. I mean, in context, the verse is typically used, for of empowerment, which I'm not saying it shouldn't be, but it's actually a verse that's bringing us towards contentment, finding contentment, and that's a very, very important to keep context about, especially those Hobby Lobby verses.
I mean, he tells you what Christ has given him strength to do in the verses leading up into it.
Yeah.
To be humble, to be abased, to be in prison, to walk with joy. I can do all those things that I just told you about because Christ gives me strength. I mean, he doesn't really mince words. We just decide to cut those parts out because they don't fit good on a coffee mug.
Yeah.
It doesn't make me feel good when I read that one hanging on the wall.
Yeah.
Well, what's funny to me is the only place that I actually have feel contentment, I guess you could say, is, and this is a negative, not a positive, is in my Christian life. I can be content with where I am, but in every other aspect of my life, we have a hard time being content. We have a hard time being content with the salaries that we make. We have a hard time being content with the house that we live in, with the car that we drive, with the job that we have. And we have a hard time being content with that, and we always push and we always strive and we always want to do better, except for maybe when it comes to loving my neighbor. Then I'm kind of content with where I am there. I don't really want to push the envelope with that. And now with my job, yeah, I'm going to push that envelope, and so being content, I don't know, I wish I was at a place where I could be content with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Jay,
there. I'm
do
sorry.
you think it's easier for do you think it's easier for people who are financially well off to be content, or easier for the people who are really financially low to be content?
I think it's easy for anyone to be content. I think we're always striving for something more. We want something else that we don't have. I see that on both sides of it. I think the people who don't have a lot, they're always wanting more, and the people who have a lot, they're still wanting more. I think it's just part of our human nature to just never be completely content with what we have and where we're at.
It reminded me of the passage
with what you're content in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It reminded me of the passage about the rich man who came to Jesus, and what must I do to be saved? And sell everything you've got and follow me. And man, that's where the camel going through the eye of the needle comes in. But I think you see that, like Jennifer said, you see that just as much, just in a different form, with people that are, having to do without a lot. So it's
I think a lot of it has to do with where their comparison is too. Whenever we get in the comparison trap, regardless of our situation, it'll rob you of your joy. And so if somebody has a little and they're always looking at the Joneses next door who have things, they're never going to be content. But is it Rockefeller they put the quote to? They asked him how much is enough He said just one more dollar, and he was
Mm.
currently the richest man in the world when I asked him that.
Mm.
So I don't think, as long as the evaluation of whether I'm joyful or happy is relative to my circumstances, it doesn't matter if I have a whole lot of things sitting in my house or a little bit of things sitting in my house. If my joy is compared to that, then I'm always going to be in a cycle of discontentment.
Yeah, Jay, I had one more thought. If you read here about what is being described, what's being mentioned as being content, the writer here is talking about, or Paul's talking about being content with these various physical states. And the reason he can be content with these various temporary physical states is because of his spiritual condition with Christ there in verse 13.
Yeah.
So everything he's saying he's content with are these temporary physical states, and that's what we're dealing with right now. We're dealing with, sickness that, should be relatively temporary, and not being able to meet together, which should be relatively temporary. And if we're in a good place with the Lord, we can get through these temporary physical setbacks till those things pass.
Yeah, that is so good. That's so good. Anybody else?
It's funny because I do use "For I can do everything through Christ who strengthens me" with kind of my motto going into some of my races. And my first triathlon, I had it written on a bucket I was using. But for me, when I started my current job, going on this year will be 10 years, there were some weeks I could have like 10 clients. And when your income is based on collection, seeing 10 clients isn't financially a lot. But then one of the things I had to think about was I may not be receiving financial gain from that, but what are my clients receiving? And ultimately that's why I'm there. And then I could have 28. Thankfully numbers have grown, and there's some weeks I could have 28. I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm about to, I just need to go in a cave and not hear anybody. And so it's finding that happy balance of going, okay, you can't have a little and ask for a lot, and then have a lot and ask for a little, and knowing that the clients are there why they're there, and that's why I do what I do. And I think I can't do it without him. That's for sure. There's some weeks that are a lot harder than others, for varying reasons. And so, especially right now, and I think with the mental health field, we're going to really see it in the next few months and within the years to come. So it's just I have to lean on that to help my clients.
Amanda, I don't want it to sound like I was banging on people using that verse for encouragement.
No.
I just
I'm
think
saying I am one who does.
Right. I think you should. I think where I struggle is when, like, a coach tells his team, "We can go win tonight because God gives me strength." Like, for you to use that verse, I think it's 100% apt for you to say, whether I break the world record for speed today or whether I come in the middle of the pack or I come in dead last, I can do this with contentment. I can do this with joy. I can do this with hope, and I can do this with my walk with God and my testimony, and like all those things can be intact regardless if I break a record or if I break a leg. My hope and my joy is intact. I think it's when we start telling kids that are 5'2" that they can dunk because they can do all things through Christ. Josh is giving me a look. If he wants to come over and dunk tomorrow, I'll video it.
Local goal, now do it.
And I think that's the only time we get in trouble. I think we should be able to do the things that are in our path in front of us with the strength that Christ gives us. And it's just whether we can do that with contentment or grumbling is what requires his strength.
Hey, Josh, I have an adjustable goal in the driveway. So
There you go.
Thing down to about
Oh,
I hope we can go low, really low.
Well, I want to end
Sometimes to me, you got to remember with what Caleb was talking about is, finishing
Yeah.
is sometimes the goal.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just finishing. If you're
That's
going
good.
around Salem Lake You know, maybe it's not to have your best time. Maybe it's just to finish.
Yes.
And that's with whatever strength it is that He gives you. You know, I think we get confused with that. And
Yeah, you're right. I want to finish with one thought because I never really, I've read this passage so many times, but Paul comes in verse 14 and he still says, "But you've done well to share with me in my affliction." And he's like, "Hey, I'm content whether you do or don't. I'm content whether it's good or bad. I'm content whatever circumstance I'm in." But then he's like, "You guys, thanks for sharing with me in my affliction." And just that really spoke volumes to me, that what I said Sunday, that we're all in this thing together. I've been so blessed by our church through this, that everyone has worked really hard to stay connected and to check on one another and to be there for one another, even though we can't in person do it right now. A lot of this is going on right here. A lot more than honestly, I didn't think, well, people wouldn't do it. I just thought, man, I don't know if people will, some folks that aren't tech savvy, will they jump on board and try to do this stuff with us? We're seeing a lot of folks say, yep, this is what I'm going to do. And we've, Deb's group, you guys, every Sunday, 11:30, you guys are pushing 20 people on a Zoom call.
And y'all come. Anybody can come. Y'all come.
I think that's awesome every Sunday. And I jump on there with them for a few minutes and just listen in. We've seen, I think, through this trial, we've seen our body of our congregation, I think, come together and really work hard to do things together. And I think Paul's getting at that a little bit here. I can do all of this. God's strengthening me, but hey, we're God's people. Thank you. I think come together. Really work hard to do things. All right, who's got me going?
Who's got Facebook on?
So, God's people, thank you.
Come on, fess up.
All right, who's got me going? Somebody's got to turn me off. There we go. What do you guys think? I mean, I know you agree with that, but any thoughts on that?
When you make those phone calls, people are so appreciative. Now, I don't do near as much of it as I should. It's not like I don't have the time to do it. I just let myself get distracted. But when you do make those calls, like to Miss Penny or, you know, some of our precious seniors and stuff, it's just, you can see their smile through their voice. It means a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can say, Jay, you know, as far as continuing to endure together through this, you know, I think you've talked about it some, that, you know, we've had great responses to our live streaming events. We've had, you know, lots of people tune in every week. And I can say for me, I've had some friends and family in West Virginia that are tuning in and watching our live stream to worship with us, because their churches are smaller. They don't have the technology we have, and they're still able to, you know, even believers elsewhere joining us in this affliction,
Yeah,
and worship together and fellowship together. So
that's awesome. And I think, you know, even moving forward, even now more than ever, we should focus on the fact that, again, you know, at some point, I used both sides of the lectern Sunday. That's sometimes you might find yourself on this side of, you know, where Paul's like, I found myself being hungry, but then I found myself at times being full. And at any given moment in the history of the church, or even our church as a congregation, there are going to be folks on both sides of that who are going to need a pick-me-up. They're going to need the body of Christ to step in and be the church. And this is just Acts church right here. This is the book of Acts, stepping up, sharing. Koinonia is the word that we've used many times, that biblical sharing of picking up one another, being there for one another, helping one another. And I think it's awesome. And Emily just posted on the Facebook feed that pillow with this emoji. So I think that it's important that we just continue to, don't let that leave our minds as a focus, that Paul relied on the church to help him in his travel. Now, Paul was a hard-working dude. You study his life, but he also was grateful for the times that the church picked him up and helped him. And I think we ought to be doing the same.
basket.
Anybody?
I think when he talks about the affliction part, for any of y'all that has ever hit a low spot, a church is kind of a tough place to go through a rough situation sometimes, and sadly, it shouldn't be the case. And I think now more than ever, our neighbors are looking to see how we're going to respond, and it's easy to love folks, and when things are good and they're not going through tough times, but loving people through. I am so thankful that I've had people to love me through my affliction, and sometimes it's not always found in the church, and that's what hurts, and that's what I hope we can. This will cause some of the pretense to fall away, and it'll cause some of the they don't care what we do there for an hour and a half in the four walls of that church.
Amen.
And so to try to, and that's such a hard barrier to break because it's happened to so many people in churches, and so loving people. When Paul says, "Man, when I was going through it, thanks for not leaving me. Thanks for not kicking me when I was down." And we've all probably been kicked while we were down, but God's also put people in my life that they've bent down and got kicked with me, and
Amen.
so,
That's all.
being with people through that affliction, that's what it's about.
That's a good word right there.
Jay,
Yeah.
one of the things that I find as a positive, I've enjoyed this, but understand that one of the positives I see is out of this is that we're having to get out of our comfort zone.
Yep.
We're having to find new ways to reach out to one another and stay connected with one another. The idea of Zoom, I had no idea what Zoom was. I had to have my granddaughter come over here and help me download all of this stuff and give me a tutorial on it. But the exciting thing is that you're stepping out of a comfort zone. You're finding new ways to stay in touch with God's people. And the little things, like Deb said, a phone call, just hearing somebody's voice, it just re-excites you, re-energizes you, and just motivates you to want to stay connected. At least it has for me.
That's good. Good word. Somebody else?
You were talking about being in both sides of the boat. Sometimes you're poor and sometimes you're not, and you're able to bless other people. I think the blessing of it is knowing that you were there once and you can help somebody else who was where you was.
Yep.
It's amazing when you are the person that needs help and somebody reaches out to you and says, "Let me help you." That's so humbling. But it's even more humbling to say, "You know what? I was where you are. Let me help you. Let me bless you the way somebody blessed me."
Yeah.
Yes.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
and I think it's a time that God is there saying, you know what, you talk the talk, now let's see if you can walk the walk. And it's just like Susan was saying, he's saying, you know what, you remember back at such and such time, I carried you a right good ways, and this is where I placed you now. Now, there is things and people that you can, if nothing else but a phone call to, doing whatever, and I've equipped you with this. Now, it's time to put it in action, put faith in action. And I think that's what part of this is who's gonna man up and do what really needs to be done.
Yeah, that's good, Ted. You're right. I think walking to obedience is a big part of all of this, and that's coming this Sunday. We'll talk a little bit about that some more.
Nice segue.
Yeah. it's weird the last several weeks and you guys have probably figured it out by now. If you haven't, I don't know. But we've been pre-recording the services, and so I've been getting my messages done early. And so today was my prep day. Going to preach the sermon tomorrow, and so yeah, probably good segue right into that. But you guys have been awesome. I really appreciate. We're gonna go ahead and pause it here because I don't want to get it too long to post it. We got to probably do a little bit of editing here to post it. Any closing remarks, right quick? Just anybody got one quick thought they want to share before I wrap it up? Something you just got to share.
I don't know how I would get through something like this without my church family and the Lord. If this had happened to me before salvation, I would have been, just walking around like this, what's my best guess of what to do about anything. So I'm very grateful that God brought us to Oaklawn these many years ago.
Awesome. Me too. Anybody else right quick? Final word?
Well, Jay, it just impresses upon my heart for all of us to meet the needs of each other. Right now, that's what we're concentrating on. I think this church, the family of Oaklawn, like you and Josh going and singing to Josh's class, I tell that and smiles from people that aren't members of Oaklawn are saying that was so neat to hear. And we're doing things like that and getting out of comfort zones, making phone calls and offering to mow yards or different things. I mean, we've had opportunities and we still will have more. And I just think it's a good thing that we concentrate on our families, but concentrate on our Oaklawn and our Christian brothers and sisters.
I gotta go, guys. Love y'all.
Love you, Deb.
See ya.
All right, guys, I'm going to close it out. Jim, I'm going to ask you to close us in prayer. Would you mind doing that, Jim Warren?
Yes, sir. Can I ask one question before?
Yes, sir.
Do I just X out of this at the end of it?
Yeah,
bottom right corner says leave meeting.
Says leave meeting, and I can end the meeting too, but I'll have to stop the recording. But yeah, just go to end meeting or leave meeting. Yep. So Jim, pray for us, and then we'll be dismissed.
Almighty God, we thank you for these moments that we've had together when we can discuss our own weakness and vulnerabilities and how your word brings strength and guidance and light into our path. Lord, I pray that your spirit might continue to descend upon us so that as your children, we might truly get out of our comfort zone and reach out to one another and share the burdens of one another and share the joys of one another and continue to be your family, your hands and your feet in our community. Lord, I pray that you might bless our church as it continues to do your will. I pray, Lord, that you might continue to touch each life. Lord, we know that these are difficult times and people are having difficult times within their homes, but we simply pray that you might be with us, that you might give us the patience, that you might give us the guidance to go through this and to glorify your name in all that we do. We simply ask this in your precious name. Amen.
All right, man. Love you guys. Thanks so much for helping. And hopefully we'll do this again soon.